Hi, welcome to grantvanzyl.com, where we're passionate about building confidence through education. Today we're going to be interviewing Stephen Young, who is a passionate web developer and programmer. Hope you enjoy the interview. So today we've got Stephen Young with us. So Stephen, let's start from the beginning. Tell us where you grew up.
Originally in Johannesburg, in down south in Alberton.
Okay.
Moved to Somerset West when I was in end of standard 6. My mom got sick with a heart condition, so we moved down here for the clean air. Hated my parents for making me move. So I was very grumpy for about 2 years. But now I'd never go back. I love it here. So,
Okay.
So I was there, and then I finished school, studied diploma in computer science for a year, and then went to the UK, worked there for 2 years.
Okay, and what did you end up doing in the UK?
I worked for a company called Dunstan Thomas. They were a software consultancy agency, so we did some work for British Telecom, Channel 4, those kind of things. And they were also a Microsoft and Borland partner. Borland was a popular programming language back in the day.
Okay.
So actually ended up doing quite a lot of teaching and training, which was very weird for me because I'm quite shy naturally.
Yeah.
But the way it worked there is you got bonuses if you did the teaching classes, and when we moved there, you save up all of your cash for to go overseas, and you spend it all in about 5 minutes. So like I paid my deposit, bought a train pass, and then had no more money left for food. So for a while we were eating baked beans out of the tin. And you put the tin on the stove and heat it up. So I had quite a lot of incentive to do the teaching courses, even though it terrified me.
I think that happens so much, where you think you're going to go over where the grass is so much greener, and then you get there and you realize actually everything that side is so much more expensive and lifestyle is way more expensive. So.
Yeah, but I think it was good being put in that situation where it was really living day to day, had nothing, and coming through that on the other end, and actually getting a decent job and being able to go on holidays, and it kind of gives you the self-confidence that if something like that's going to happen again, you can figure something out. So.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of youngsters today, they're playing with the idea of, listen, do we go overseas, get the experience, do we stick it out here? Now, from your experience, what do you think was the real impact in that time?
So it's a very different time, right? So when I was there, it was very easy to get work. I think it's probably easier to get a job as a programmer here in South Africa now than it is in the UK. The economy isn't fantastic. But on the other hand, it was really good seeing a completely different life. Also sometimes think we don't realize how good you have it here. You can have a fairly decent job, so maybe you can't go to Italy every 2 weeks on holiday, but the kind of lifestyle you can live and the quality of life for a fraction of the cost that you have over there is it's not something to ignore. Yeah,
and I think that's quite important nowadays, so to balance those two up, because I mean, otherwise what we'll end up doing is we just work our butts off to earn Uber salaries, and then we don't realize that, the quality of life earning X is exactly the same as earning Z, Exactly.
I mean, so they've done a whole bunch of studies, and, I think it's done in the States, but once you earn over, say, about $80,000 a year, making more money has got no effect on your happiness. So up to, once you can take care of your basic needs and have a little bit of extra cash to be able to maybe go on holiday and treat yourself to something every now and then, after that, what makes you happy has got nothing to do with money. So I think it's very important to have that balance.
I think I totally agree with that. I mean, otherwise what happens if you don't set those clear goals in the beginning, you'll end up just working so hard and totally unnecessarily.
Yeah, so you've got all this money, but you've not done anything with it,
Full on. Okay, now you major into the research sort of game. I mean, that's like your hobby, and you do that for fun. I mean, you don't have a TV or anything at home.
No, well, I've got Netflix, but mostly watch documentaries.
Yeah, to just get research. And I think that's great. You know, I mean, today we actually waste quite a bit of time on watching unnecessary stuff. So you've obviously gone that route. Now, give us some of your avenues on how you do your research, because I mean, you do a lot of research.
So I don't really have a methodology. I just kind of, I'll listen to something on the radio or actually listen to a lot of podcasts. And then if I find something that I think is interesting, I'll just Google it, right?
Yeah.
So you just start looking, and after a while you kind of get to know the people who've got interesting things to say, and to almost use them as people to curate recommendations for you. And then also I just read a lot. So a lot of the books that people recommend I'd already read, so I'll go back and read that. I've got friends who are interested in different topics, so you know, I'm interested in lots of little different things, but and then I've got people who are really into design, and I'll get some inspiration from them. I've got other friends who are mathematicians, and then they'll tell me some interesting stuff. My brother's ex-girlfriend Natasha, she's a AIDS researcher. She's doing postdoc research in the States now at the moment. So she's often sending me interesting papers on, you know, neuropsychology and all those kind of things. So it's just a little bit of stuff everywhere. And the more things you've read, the more connections you can make. So it becomes easier to jump from one thing to the next. But it's nothing really structured. It's just whatever I find interesting, I'll read about.
Yeah, I think that's great. Like from a starting point, because I mean, we're also interested in so many cool things, and we don't even know where to start. So, what would your advice be on that?
So it all depends. So it's very different for art world than it is for the science world. If you're interested in things like psychology, which I think is everybody really should know. A lot of the user experience design field is really just psychology applied to user interfaces. So if you're reading those kind of things, I'd start with the popular science books. So, you know, there's a million of them that come out every year. So just pick whatever is popular on like Barnes & Noble or Amazon. Start reading, you know, you'll find what you're interested in, and then you know, see what other books, so when you look in Amazon, there's often bought with, so you can look at that other list, and then it kind of, you follow a little bit of a trail until something grabs you, and then you just read. So it's really difficult for me because it's really, I don't really research with a purpose, I just find it interesting, so I'll read whatever grabs my interest.
But have you found that the more research you do, the more confident you become in it? And have you developed a sort of style, or is it kind of all over the show?
What you tend to get eventually is you can tell who is full of shit, you know, so who's doing it because they're just trying to sell a book. And then you find people who are, like Malcolm Gladwell's got amazing books. The Freakonomics guys have amazing, very, very interesting stuff, Stephen Dubner and them. So you kind of, you get to know that, okay, well, whatever this person, what they release is interesting. Tim Ferriss is also very interesting. So you kind of build this like loose connection of people that you think are interesting and whose opinions match yours. Doesn't necessarily, so I mean, there is a danger that you end up in this bubble, right, where you just gravitate to people who already think the same as you.
So you have to be open-minded at the same time.
Yeah, so try, you know, if you hold a very strong opinion about something, try read the opposite. So don't just read everything.
Get a complete open view. Okay, and on the point of different books and authors and that, do you recommend any specific guys to really look into from a business perspective? I mean, obviously books are so open-ended. So
on the business side of things, I think you should probably read Freakonomics. That's Stephen Dubner, and can't remember the other guy's name now. I would definitely read all of Seth Godin's got quite a few good books. Lynchpin is good. Purple Cow. The Icarus Deception, they're also very good. It's a little bit off the business side, but I think is very important is the talent code. So that talks about the difference between how your brain learns something, and the fact that everything is learnable. So it kind of opened my eyes to the difference between you get a growth mindset and you get a fixed mindset. And a growth mindset believes that you can learn anything, you can get better. And a fixed mindset, you believe that you're born with an innate level of talent. So I'll give an example.
It's like you get a capacity and you reach that, and that's it.
And then you never grow. So like a good example of that in my own life is when I was young, my mom used to work, and after school there was an art school around the corner from where we lived, and then I'd sit there every day and kind of draw, and I won an art prize when I was 12, and I kind of thought, because I was so young, I just, I'm good at art. And on the reverse side of that, I was never really good at sports. So I was quite skinny and awkward when I was younger. And then I came to Palvalet, and they had a very good art program, and there were lots of other really good artists there. And then I wasn't the best anymore. And then all of a sudden I was like, well, I'm okay, but I'm not that good, because I thought it was an innate talent. And then after school, I started doing sports, and I just didn't like team sports, but I liked individual sports. So I like wakeboarding and kite surfing, all those kind of things. And over the years, I'm probably a much better sportsman now than I'm an artist. And it was just because I had a growth mindset in sports and a fixed mindset in art. So I think just breaking that mold. So the two books for that is The Talent Code and Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
So Outliers, the big thing it taught me was that you need a certain level of competence. So one of the things they say in there is, once your IQ is over 120, you're no more or less likely to get a Nobel Prize as your IQ goes higher, because then you're smart enough.
Exactly. I mean, then you hit the
then you're smart enough
above average or excellent mark,
Yes, and then things like, well, how tenacious are you? Can you stick with a problem? How well are you dealing with people? Can you get funding for your research? Those things start mattering more. Same with basketball. Once you're over 6'2", you don't have an advantage over somebody who's shorter than you. So if you combine that with the talent code, which says everything is learnable, so you just need a basic level of competence or skill, and then you can grow up from there.
That's interesting. I love the fact that you're talking about when you were small, you thought you were this, and now that you've grown up, you've like actually figured out actually the complete opposite to that. So that's like the psychology behind it. Now, how important do you think that is today in understanding who we are in order to really get the fullness out of ourselves?
I think it's very important. I still don't think I know really everything about myself. I think
it's going to be a never-ending journey,
And there's certain things that you don't want to accept about yourself, so you kind of kid yourself that it's not true. So, but I do think it's very important. I don't think it's easy. I'm still kind of working it out, I think.
I think for me, it's a never-ending journey. But when I started getting to the point where I started understanding my personality a little better, I realized what I enjoyed doing, what I didn't enjoy doing, and then I focused on those things that I enjoyed doing.
Yeah, like it's very important. I speak to at Allen Gray where I work. I've got a few guys that report to me. So part of my responsibility is to kind of coach them and help them develop themselves. And one of the things I always tell them is, if you're not enjoying or love what you're doing, you aren't going to be able to keep up with the guys who do. Because on the weekend, when you go home and do something else, they're going and learning this thing. So you're never going to.
And they're passionate about it,
and also, there's this idea that you should always, you should always work on your weak points. But I don't really think so. I think you should know what your weak points are, and then find a team around you who
can work on those. Definitely.
So,
I agree.
And then you just go and do the stuff that you've got. You want to be playing in the space where you've got an unfair advantage. Don't go play in the space where you are struggling uphill and there's somebody else who's just naturally better at it than you.
No, definitely. I think that makes a lot of sense. So you mentioned Alan Gray. So how does it feel to be part of a nice corporate company like that?
I really love it there actually. The main reason I enjoyed is the people. Everybody there is just wicked smart. So it's really fun to work somewhere where you don't have to explain anything twice. You give somebody an idea and they run with it and they make something amazing out of it. And the second thing, which I think is almost more important, is that it is the most ethical place I've ever worked.
Oh, wow.
So they will never do anything that's not in the client's best interest.
Okay.
They will always try their very, very best to do the right thing for the investor. Yeah. And even if it's not the best thing for the company. Yeah. So all the way up to the very, very highest level. So that's very, very important for me. And I've been at other startups, which were very fun and very interesting, but just nowhere else that I've worked has had that kind of level of ethics and I've worked at other places with lots of talented people, I have to say that.
But I think Alan Gray has really got it down when it comes to ethics, the investment philosophy. They really know what they're doing and they stick to their guns through rough and tough times, and they are consistent, especially on the investment front, which they are specialists in. Yeah. Now at Alan Gray you wear quite a few different hats. You're the architect for what we see as the allengray.co.za. You operations and you team manager and you out of those different spheres, what do you find being the most exciting for you?
So I tend to like working on the bits where I can see there's going to be the most impact. So my role is very much in the middle of a lot of things. Yeah. So what I'm interested in is building amazing products, right? Yeah. And wherever the weak point is for that, I like to get involved and try to, so started getting a bit of a design ethic going on in Alan Gray. So realizing how important design is, educating other people about design. Before that, it was all about building the right team, because they did a lot of external contractors before and then decided to bring things in-house. So for the first 3 years that I was there, I was just interviewing people non-stop. Sure. So we would see 100 CVs for every one person we made an offer for, so it was really, took up a huge amount of time. Wow.
On that point, before you move on, but let's talk about CVs quickly. I mean, that's always an interesting thing and it's such a daunting thing for most people. Obviously you dealt with thousands of CVs. What would you say was the CVs that stuck out and why would those CVs stick out to you?
So it would be the people who didn't bring me a CV. The people who I knew or who somebody I trusted told me this guy is really good.
So reference that?
Yeah. So doing amazing work. I'd much rather see something that you did than see a piece of paper that says you did something. Okay. And then networks. So as you get to know the best people in the industry, the best people know the other people who are on their level. Yeah. They like to work with them. They like keeping in contact with them. Definitely. If you work at a company and there was one guy there who was just brilliant, he's the guy that you tend to stay in contact with, right? So because you learn from them, there's a feedback. Yeah. And I mean, the tech industry in Cape Town is pretty small, right? So you know who the good guys are. Yeah. And if you don't know if this guy's good, you know somebody who is good who knows him. So that's what I would say. I think CV is almost a waste of time. Don't bother with them. Yeah. Just
kind of like the new sort of resume today is your online sort of presence, right?
Yeah. For in the tech world, if you've done open source stuff, if you've got side projects, those count a lot for me because I can look at what it looks like, I can feel it, I can see what you would do if it's just you. And then being able to tell me afterwards why you made certain decisions, what you learned from it, how did you get to the point where it is. That I find is the easiest way. Because it's very hard, it's very, very difficult to determine if somebody is a good programmer. It's such a huge field. You can use all the right buzzwords but not understand deep down what it actually is. So, and it's difficult to unpack that in an hour interview or even a 2 hour or 3. I mean, we do lots of interviews.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's very difficult to kind of get to that. I mean, after, you know, seeing so many people and so many CVs, you kind of get an instinct.
Because I mean, the point is to stand out, right? And you don't want to be like the average CV that gets handed in, and then at the end of the day, you know, like that person has to read through it. You want a reference where you know that person from wherever, and you know, okay, well, that work is, I can't go without it. You know?
Exactly. So you need to be good. So that's the ticket to the game, right? If you're not good, then you're not going to get the best jobs. But once you're good and once you know what you're doing and you know your craft, then you need to be different. So how are you different? What have you done that makes you stand out? If you people that are not just programmers, I think, are also very valuable. People who can do programming and something else. So people who know programming and design, people who know programming and how to admin servers, or, you know, those kind of things. And I think this is true in any field, right? If you just look at one thing, there's always going to be somebody better than you. But if you're good at 3 or 4 unique things, that combination is going to be invaluable to somebody. And there's not going to be that many people with that same combination. I agree. So I think you need to cultivate 2 or 3 things that you are really, really, really good at. And then play to that strength and get really good at explaining to people why you're different and what it is that you bring to the table that somebody else doesn't.
Yeah, you kind of need to be confident in who you are and your value proposition.
Exactly.
And I mean, someone says to you, what is your value proposition? You pause, and it's like already you've undersold yourself, you know.
Exactly.
Okay, great. Now tell us more about 22/7. I know you're one of the guys or what part of the team that started it up there.
Yeah, I went just after they started. I went over with one of the guys that used to work at Alan Gray. He was one of the founding members.
That's an old mutual initiative, right?
No, so it was originally by Christo Darfel. He was the founder of 2020, the first online bank. Which eventually there were problems with the banking licenses. The company that sponsored their banking license went bankrupt, which kind of brought...
It's not very good for a bank, eh?
Yeah, so this was during the whole crisis
recession time and that,
So they kind of... they got unlucky because banking licenses are super expensive. So you can't really get a banking license hoping that a bank's going to survive. So they worked on a banking license for somebody else, and then it just but then Christo started 22/7, and the whole idea with 22/7 is to use behavioral economics to adjust the way people their relationship to their money. You give them your account details, it goes and scrapes all of your information, transactions, automatically categorizes.
So like your bonds and your loans and anything
loans, your day-to-day accounts.
Budgets on steroids, pretty much.
Exactly. Well, and completely automated. So it's not really meant just to be a budget tool. It's, you know, like when you open the app, all of your everything you did today is already pre-done. There's machine learning algorithms that learn what the names of the transactions are and automatically categorizes it for you. It helps you with your tax returns, all those kind of things. I think they're doing some interesting things. It'll be interesting to see where they go. Okay.
And from being on the programming side with them, what is the one thing that you've learned from them?
So I didn't go there to learn programming. So the reason I went there is because Christo is amazing at building brands. And he's got an incredible design aesthetic. So the amazing designers there, got to know some really, really interesting people. So that was the main reason I actually went. It was because I could learn something outside of my main field.
So to challenge yourself a little bit.
So to see how you do brand building, how do you handle the press, how do you create a buzz around a product,
which they've done pretty well.
Phenomenal. I mean, Christo is world class at that.
They've definitely done a good job at that. You can see that. And I mean, branding is going to be so important going forward now.
Exactly. So that was why I went. and you know, that's what I got out of it. And then Alan Gray approached me to go back, and then I really wanted to take what I learned there and try to apply it inside the Alan Gray environment.
Okay, cool. And you mentioned earlier that one of your hobbies is now windsurfing.
Kitesurfing.
Kitesurfing.
Yeah.
I'm assuming wind hunters originated from that.
Yeah.
It's quite nice to be able to be a programmer and just put a program together quickly to find the wind.
Yeah, so there's we partnered with a guy here in Cape Town who's got wind meters at all of the big kite beaches, and we built a real-time wind feed system and lost a lot of money on it. So I could learn some very valuable lessons there. I think I spent more money than I should have too early, so it didn't really validate that there was a market. Okay,
well that's interesting. I mean, that's a lesson in itself, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not always like the green light. Sometimes.
Yeah. So the thing is, we moved forward based on things that weren't real. So we'd show it to people and they'd say, "Oh, that looks amazing. I definitely use that." And then until you asked them to actually put some money down, right? So like one of the things I learned there is, if you're going to start a new venture, especially if it's if you're going to open another McDonald's, you know that there's people who's going to buy McDonald's, and if you just do what they say, you've got a business, right? It's a business model in a box. But if you're trying to invent something new, you can't do that on the basis of people saying, yeah, that's awesome, that's really cool. Because first of all, most of the times you're going to ask your friends, they want to say good things to you, right? So they want, and then they're like, yeah, that sounds quite nice, I will use that. But it doesn't mean that they will spend their money.
Yeah, exactly. It's two different things. Where put money where you talk, and not spending any money on anything.
And money is a vote of belief, right? You're saying, I believe that this thing's going to work. I believe that this is going to bring value to my life. And then also the other thing is, the size of the market wasn't big enough, and to scale would have required putting up weather stations all over the world, right? So there wasn't an easy organic way to grow the business. So learned valuable lessons doing that. So definitely would do things very different next time.
I think it's important now. I mean, I get a lot of guys that come up to me with a whole bunch of ideas, and before I set up business structures or anything like that, I always say, well, have you done a demo run?
Yeah.
Like, have you got anyone that's interested in it? Have you approached your friends to see if they would pay for it, Because you'll find that most of the time, that will be already a sign whether it's going to work or not,
Exactly. And the thing is, ideas are pretty much worthless. What matters is execution, right? So, and your idea is probably wrong. So it's a good place to start, but you need to be able to shift and adjust until you find something that fits the market. Like speaking about business books, The Lean Startup is amazing.
Yeah, that's a great book,
Yeah. So, and that kind of really talks to that whole idea of how do you test this idea before you spend money on your idea. And I'd read that before.
Yeah, which is kind of important now, because I mean, otherwise what you'll end up doing is you're wasting your emotions, because it's an emotional process, let's be honest. Then secondly, you're wasting your resources, and then thirdly, you're going to be wasting a lot of money unnecessarily.
And even more important than the money is the time, right? Because that opportunity cost is not just the money, it's also what else could you have been doing with that time? Could I have learned the same? I could have learned those same. So for wind hunters, for example, I could have gotten people to pay me, and I could have sat with the wind meter on the beach and texted them the answers, right? So I could have tested, without spending a cent, I could have tested that there's a working business model here. But I didn't think that way, because you have this idea about this beautiful thing that you've dreamed up in your head, and you've got all these logical reasons why it makes sense. But it's not something that it's not a big enough problem for people to spend money on to fix. So, so finding ways to test those ideas, proving that there's actually a business here, and then starting off completely manually, and then only automating the stuff when you've got too many clients to do it manually. So it's a very different way to think, and it's very difficult for techies to think that way, because we just think, well, we'll just build something to solve the world's problems, you know.
But the problem with techies is your time is your money, you know. And I mean, if you go and spend all your time on something that's not going to work, and it's kind of pointless.
Exactly. And also often what techies do is they spend 3 years building it inside their basements, not showing it to anybody. And the whole time you're doing that, you're not learning anything. You're not learning anything about your market. You're not learning anything about your customers. You know, so you need to speak to people. You need to get stuff out there.
Definitely. But you know, the great thing about that, the positive side, even though, I mean, it's operational and it's not as successful as you would like it to be, but you've learned so much from it.
Exactly.
You've learned from the process. And that's one thing we mustn't forget, is that even through our failures or however you want to put it, you are going to learn through that process. And I mean, I can mention for myself numerous sort of occasions where I've done things, haven't worked out how I wanted it to, but that's led to such better things later on.
Yeah. So I was watching a documentary on the Large Hadron Collider, and one of the scientists there said the secret to success is going from failure to failure with undiminished enthusiasm.
Oh wow, that's brilliant.
And you know, I think it's very true.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about your blog.
Yes. No.
Okay, so tell us about your blog a little bit, because obviously you and I share a very similar passion, and that's about educating people and getting people more confident to become better at whatever sphere that they want to be. So grantvanzyl.com is all about getting people more confident around the investment world, financial world, and you are obviously trying to get people more confident around the development programming world. Yeah.
So my blog's called Aesthetic.io, and it's kind of, at the moment, mostly focused on design and programming. Yeah. But eventually we'll probably spread out more, because I think there's more than just design and programming needed to build amazing products. Yeah. So being able to speak to your markets, understand, being able to run the business in an efficient way, all those kind of things. Yeah. So there's a lot more.
Because programming is one thing, but then there's a business behind it that you need to understand.
If you're programming the wrong thing, then what's the point?
Yeah, right? Exactly.
So, but you know, for me, the area where I've got the most expertise and the most experience is in programming. And I think there's a lot that you can do to just... So what I see a lot with guys, they're really enthusiastic. They're really dedicated to learning their craft, but then they focus on the wrong things. And I did it for a long time too. And the reason you do that is because you don't know what the right thing to focus on is. Yeah. So that's kind of where I started with the blog. So again, because I mentor some of the guys at work, instead of just telling them once, if they come to me with a question, I would write a blog post on that, so that the next time we've got a new guy come in, he can also see that, but then I also put it out there. So
which is great, and I mean, most of that stuff is stuff that's not going to change. So
no, and that's a big thing too. So I try not to focus too much on specific technologies. I try to focus on, because a lot of technologies try to solve the same problem. They try to solve it in a slightly different way, and they make different trade-offs. But if you know the underlying principles and the driving forces that are made these technologies necessary, you are much better when it's something new coming out. You can say, oh right, they're just trying to solve that problem. It's slightly different in this way, or it's actually just the same. So I don't know what all this hype is about. So that's kind of where the focus lies. And the same with design. There's some base. So if you want to be a great designer and world class, then it's years of practice. If you want to learn the basics, there's a few things that you need to learn, and you can learn it quite quickly. And well, at least you can be better than 90% of the people out there.
I think with going forward into the future, I mean, programming is going to be a non-negotiable sort of thing when it comes to business.
Yes, yeah. So
and not necessarily to be able to program, but to understand programming.
And to understand the possibilities that it opens up, and to understand how easy it is to innovate. And to also realize that, if you're not, in today's world, you're not competing anymore in a local space. It's global, right? And, if you're not innovating and coming up with something new, you are going to be irrelevant soon. Obviously it depends, right? There's you get the businesses that swing for the fences, and it's binary. So you either make $1 billion or you make nothing. And then you get smaller businesses where you're adding value to somebody's life, and so you can choose, right? So and I think that's the way that that businesses are going to go. You're going to have these kind of category changing, disruptive businesses that just, Netflix made Blockbuster go bankrupt. Totally. But then you get other businesses where you just, if you can actually niche down. So instead of being a developer who builds websites, you're a developer who builds websites for food bloggers who are just growing from
niche market.
Yes, and so because there's so many people on the internet now. So if you can find that niche where you can outcompete other people because you just have that little bit of extra thing there, people will go to you. So if you're a food blogger who's just starting to grow, you're not going to go to a generic website developer. You're going to go to the guy who's built 5 other blogs for people just like you. So, and I think that applies pretty much everywhere. So,
and I think more and more today with our sort of generation where we want instant gratification and we want very specialized stuff, we're moving more and more towards that sort of sphere than in the past where you would go to like a generalist,
And I think it's a function of the way business is moving. So if you think about it, back in the day, how do you distribute stuff? It would be, you need to have a contract with a big distributor somewhere to get it into all of the big chain stores, etc. So you had to make generic products that could work for most people. But now with the internet, you put your stuff on eBay or Etsy. You have a blog that speaks to the audience that you're interested in, and you can sell stuff. You can specialize in making only blue handbags for people who love blue handbags, right? And it doesn't matter what it is, because there's 3 billion people online, right? So somebody out there, there's enough people out there to keep you busy.
Definitely.
You just need to learn how to speak to them.
Engage them. Now, obviously, your blog focuses on a lot on helping developers and programmers. Now, if you're not a programmer and like for myself, for instance, I mean, I'm in the financial world and obviously I strive for excellence there. So I don't have the time to become this programmer. Now, for someone like myself, how would I go about getting a good understanding of the programming world?
So I don't even think you need to understand... I don't think you need to understand the programming world. I think there's other things that you need to understand more. So I think that idea of moving from like what's called, broadcasting, where you spin everything out, to narrowcasting. So how do you narrow what your message is to speak to a specific person? So I think understanding the impact the internet has had on the way business is done is mega important. Understanding how easy it's becoming to build tech. So as much as tech is expensive, but things that would, in 1998, a business that you would have needed an army of 50 to 100 developers and $100 million to build, you could probably build with 2 guys for $50,000.
Serious, so it's the technology today and the manpower and the information that we have today is just
so the engineering the technology is, for most problems, is not the hard bits anymore. Back then it was very difficult to build a website that could scale. It was very difficult. You had to go buy all of your own servers, so it was something that you needed to have a tremendous amount of money and tech experience with. Nowadays, what you need is to be able to understand your customer and figure out a way to craft your solution and your offering to
customize it for
and the technology is a piece in there. It's not everything. So it's bigger than just an app. It's everything around it. So I think that's very important. I think knowing about things like Elance and Odesk, you can outsource a lot of your stuff. So I think it's more learning to leverage what's out there already.
Definitely.
So the Mark, what's his name? The guy, he's the editor of Wired. He's got a really good talk about it. Maybe I'll give you a link. You can put it in the show notes afterwards. He's got a really good talk about the way that the internet is changing a number of different economies, and it's taking it from this central control to distributed control.
Okay.
And the first place you saw that was with like the Linux operating system.
Yeah.
Where, you know, before that, the only way you could build an operating system was by having a massive company and hundreds and hundreds of developers. And then they just decided to put all the source code out there. People started working on it just because they found it interesting. And now you've got Linux, which powers 70% of the computers in the world.
Serious, eh? I mean, it's crazy how that just happens.
Yeah,
eh?
and then the same thing happened with MP3s and the music industry, right?
I mean, look at where we're at now.
So
unbelievable.
The whole music industry basically went bankrupt. Same happened to Blockbuster. So DVDs, you needed to have a central place. You could only have a certain number of DVDs on the rack, so only the top 10 DVDs became popular. Netflix makes more than half of their money from titles that only get sold once or twice a month, because it doesn't cost them anything to have it, right? So it's that whole long tail. So before everything was hit based, so it was the head of the long tail. Now you can have you can make money by selling lots of little things once or twice.
Which is great, and the whole process is automated, so it's very little input from yourself.
You're selling bits, right?
Yeah.
You're selling like pieces of information.
Yeah,
it doesn't
definitely.
cost you anything to manufacture.
Exactly, which is great. Now, for someone like myself, I mean, obviously, like I mentioned, I don't have time to do programming and that. Where would I go look for a programmer if I've got an idea?
So it depends. It depends what you're trying to do. You've got lots of options. So if you know somebody who knows their stuff, get them to help you. So even if they're not interested in partnering with you or doing the actual work, you want to have somebody who can tell if somebody's lying to you,
guide
right?
you along the way.
Yeah, so just say, well, like this guy, he knows what he's talking about, he doesn't, be careful, right? So you need somebody that can do that. You should also just, when you think about, I think there's three things that you need. You need to have somebody who understands the business and the problem. You need somebody who knows how to turn that into technology, and you need somebody who can package that in a way that's beautiful. So so it's not anymore that you just have an idea and you go hire a programmer. You need to go hire a programmer and a designer, because it's all about
integration and look and feel and
people what people expect from an app today and what they expected from an app or a website 10 years ago is not the same.
Or even a year ago.
Exactly. So the level is just going up, and you're not going to compete if you can't. So that's just, I just want to make that point, right? You have to also have the design skills in there. So then the option is you find people near you who know those things. Again, if you're living somewhere where you don't have access to those people, it becomes difficult. You can hire people online. So Elance, Odesk, there's a few other ones where essentially what you do is you put your problem up on the website, and then there's a whole bunch of companies spread all over the world that will pitch and give you offers.
Okay,
well, you'll say, I need an app that can do this, this, and this, and then the company will say, okay, well, we can develop it for you with 50,000 rand.
Yeah, sure. So they give you proposals. That's brilliant.
Yeah,
I mean, that's how far technology's gone. I mean, it's no longer
and deploy it.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I would just be careful about, again, like we said before, unless you know that this is a problem,
legitimate.
You can spend a lot of money and
wasting your time. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Cool. And what do you think going forward in the future? I mean, as the programming space is changing so much, what's going to set apart programmers?
I think what I mentioned before, the fact that being able to do more than one thing. So not just being another programmer, another cog in the mill.
So like a one-stop sort of shop, but you've got guys that are...
Yeah, but not even... So again, so you can niche... First of all, I think programmers are going to stop working at offices. I think more and more people like GitHub, and like there's a whole bunch of these companies who literally their workforce is like Buffer is another example. Their workforce is spread all over the world, right? So it's all online. You log in, you use Skype.
Anymore, eh?
So if there's a brilliant developer in Mongolia somewhere, you can work with him, right?
Yeah.
And it saves you money because you're paying him a local salary. So you need to then, because you now have this option to work for anybody, being a generalist, I don't think is useful anymore. So if you are really good at writing, artificial intelligence programs to recognize this specific signal in whatever type of data set, you're much better off than saying, well, I can program anything, right? Because if people can go to a marketplace where they can get whatever they need, nobody needs somebody who can program anything. Everybody's got a specific problem. So pick a niche, find something that makes you different from everybody else, and then build a platform that makes that visible to the world. Because it doesn't matter if you can do those things that nobody knows about you.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's move on to, have you had an experience or a project that you worked on that it just went totally wrong?
Well, so I'd say the Wind Hunters is a good example of that, where it didn't go totally wrong. It was just that.
Well, the program itself is great.
Yeah,
it's
that's
just
fantastic,
it's just the space is.
Well, there was just no market, right? So there was never a disaster. There was always some interest. There was always a little bit of traction, and I think that's almost more dangerous than something just not working. So because you get a little bit of interest and you get a little bit of momentum, you just, okay, well, if I just do a little bit more, if I just do a little bit more, so that kind of just sucks you. It's like pulls you along, right? And then at the end, when you find
like a never-ending disease.
And the VCs in Silicon Valley call it like a living dead company, right? So okay, for them, a living dead company is a company that only makes a couple of $1 million a year, right? Because they want a 40 times return on their investment. But these things where it's almost there, and you just spend more time and more money after it, and then it's almost there, and just a little bit more.
And you always think, what? But I've already spent so much money on it.
Like cost fallacy, right?
So crazy.
Yeah. So I think. I don't think it was a disaster, but I think it was a massive learning experience. Curve,
yeah. I mean, like you say, so much positive has come out of it in the end in any case.
Exactly.
I mean, Warren Buffett talks about that hole, he calls it the black hole.
Yeah.
And he says, if the black hole is getting too deep, stop digging.
Yeah.
And it's an important philosophy that we all need to come to terms with, and in realizing that if it's not working, there's a reason why it's not working, and just stop while you can,
Yeah, there's this guy who built this product called Balsamic. It's a program to mock up user interfaces, and he's got a brilliant saying where he says you should fall in love with your problem and not your solution to the problem.
Oh,
and I think
that's a good way to look at it, because it changes your whole paradigm, gives you a whole paradigm shift.
Exactly, because if you're falling in love with your solution to the problem, you keep throwing. You're like, okay, well, if I just, if I just make this button prettier, or if I make let's just make this little thing a little bit better. But actually, the reason it's not working is because you're not solving that problem, or that problem isn't a big enough problem for people to care about.
Crazy, eh?
So I think that reframing it that way makes it a little bit easier.
No, I think it's better. I think it's way better. And I think it's going to come down to those small little paradigm shifts when it comes to all business things in the future. Just think of things totally out of the box.
Exactly. And the thing is, you can say it as many times, like, I knew all this stuff before I did that thing. But I hadn't learned the lesson, knowing it intellectually and having felt that sting of, put so much time and effort into it and it didn't work. That's how you actually learn a lesson, right? I mean, it's neurologically, that's actually how you learn, right? So your brain uses the amount of neurochemicals released during an experience to determine how important it is. So if you just sit and you read something, there's no neurochemicals going on to make it sink in. Whereas if you try something and it fails and you feel that like
impact.
Then your brain's like, okay, well, I'm never going to forget that thing. I'm never going to do that
No,
again.
definitely, I agree. I forget where I read it, but I read a quote, and it said, I've learned more from my failures than my successes. And it's like so true, because I mean, if we're not trying things, how are we ever going to be successful at anything, you know? And I think our biggest fear today is the fear of failure, you know, and that's what holds us back from so many things. So what is the one thing that you have learned that you take into every sort of project with you, or when you're dealing with people? What is that one thing that you think is helpful?
I think it's that growth mindset, that having that knowledge and belief that whatever it is, I can learn it. You know, I can figure it out. I might not be the best at it right now, but if I stick at it and I try and I learn and I read the right things and I focus on the right stuff, you can get good. You can learn that skill. Nothing is, you're not just born being good or bad at something. You know, you can work it. So that in combination with doing what you love. So the other reason that's so important is it's a psychological state called flow. So like, you know what it is. Like, have you ever, when you maybe in a conversation or busy doing something that you love, where kind of time just like 2 hours go past and you don't even realize it?
Like time flies when you're having
exactly fun. So that's called flow, and what happens in that state is you learn 2.5 times faster than in any other state,
because you're engaged more.
You make connections that you'd never make. So if you can spend more of your day in that state, you're going to be progressing 2.5 times faster than people who don't. So and then finding something that you love. The reason you love something is because it puts you in a flow state. It releases a whole bunch of neurochemicals that are super addictive and really powerful. So that feeling of loving what you're doing is actually directly correlated to how much time you spend in a flow state. So if you find that, you will just kind of accelerate past everybody else.
And I think that should actually be the foundation where everyone starts, right? Is finding that area where they can excel in naturally.
Exactly.
Because if we can find that space, then you're going to be going to work happy. You don't have problems. You're going to be enjoying doing what you want to do. And if you do have extra hours or whatever the case, then that's great, you know? It's not a big deal. So I think that's going to be like going forward, especially with the generation that we're in, is people are excelling at a rapid rate at whatever they're doing. So for us to get into a place where you want to be special, you're going to have to be very passionate about what you do, right?
Yeah, 100% agree.
Okay, cool. Well, Steve, thanks for your time today. I really appreciate it. Thanks for being on grantvanzyl.com, and we look forward to listening or seeing what else you have up your sleeve.
Thanks, man.
Awesome, man. Cheers.